Welcome to a new e-learning paradigm, AplusMap.ai.
Have you ever been there? Trying to make the best choice when you don't have unlimited resources. Like maybe figuring out college finances, or if you're running a business, trying to hit that sweet spot with pricing. These kinds of choices, big and small, they're actually, well, they're what makes economies tick.
Exactly. And figuring out how all those choices add up, how they create value, and what happens when governments or other forces get involved, that's where things get really interesting.
As always, we're here to give you that shortcut to getting truly informed. Maybe you're just curious, or maybe you're prepping for something like the AP Economics exam. Today, we're jumping into market efficiency and government policy. We'll break down how markets, tend to find an efficient balance on their own. What happens when governments step in with things like price controls or taxes, and crucially, how that impacts all of us consumers, producers, the whole economy.
Yeah, we've pulled together insights from quite a bit of analysis on market forces and policy. The aim is to, well, untangle some of this stuff, make it clearer. Hopefully you'll have some aha moments and feel ready for, whatever comes your way, test day, or just understanding the news.
Okay, so first things first. How do we actually tell if a market is working well, for everyone? Is it making the right amount of stuff at the right price? It boils down to this key idea, surplus.
Right. Surplus is, it's how we measure the benefit, the good stuff that goes to both sides when something is bought and sold. We can look at it from the buyer's angle and the seller's angle and then put it all together.
Let's start with the consumer side then. You know that feeling. You want something, you're prepared to pay a certain amount, but hey, it's cheaper. That little win. There's a name for that, right?
Absolutely. That's consumer surplus, or CS. It's just the difference between the absolute maximum price you were willing to shell out and the price you actually did pay. Think of it like a bonus. You were ready for $50 for that game, got it for $35, boom. $15 of consumer surplus. It's real value to you.
And this isn't just a feeling, right? On those supply and demand graphs economists love, where is it?
Good question. Visually, and this is important for the AP exam folks, consumer surplus is the area below the demand curve but above the actual market price. It usually looks like a triangle in the standard graph. Seeing it there really helps understand it.
Okay, got it. Below demand, above price. Now, what about the people making or selling the product? Do they get a bonuses too?
They sure do. We call that producer surplus, or PS. This is the difference between the price they actually get when they sell the item and the lowest price they would have been willing to accept. It's basically the profit above their bare minimum cost, like their reward for producing. So if a baker could sell a cake for $20 just to cover costs, but sells it for $30, that extra $10 is their producer surplus.
Makes sense. And on the graph, same kind of idea.
Yep, same idea, different spot.
Ever.
Producer surplus is the area above the supply curve and below the market price. Again, usually a triangle. Knowing where to find both CS and PS on a graph is, well, it's fundamental. Super important for analyzing market outcomes.
So we've got the consumer's bonus, CS, and the producer's bonus, PS. If we add those two together, what does that tell us overall?
When you add CS and PS, you get economic surplus, ES, or sometimes called total surplus, simple formula. ES computes CS plus PS. This number represents the total combined benefit to everyone in society, all the buyers, all the sellers from the transactions happening in that market. It's the total value created.
And here's the payoff, right? When this economic surplus is as big as it can possibly be, what does that mean?
That's the sweet spot. When ES is maximized, the market is achieving allocative efficiency. This is a really key concept. It means the economy is producing the right mix of goods and services that society wants, using resources in the best way possible. Essentially, resources are flowing to where they create the most value, maximizing overall well-being. It means all the good trades that could happen are happening. You'll definitely see this idea tested.
Okay, so if markets can be so efficient on their own, reaching this allocative efficiency, why do governments sometimes decide to jump in? Which leads us to things like price ceilings and price floors.
Right, and that's a huge question. Often the intention is good, maybe trying to make things fair or protect certain groups, but these interventions, they almost always have side effects, especially for that efficiency we just talked about. There's usually a trade-off.
Let's take a price ceiling first. What is that exactly, and why put one in place?
Okay, a price ceiling is a legal maximum price. Sellers cannot charge more than that. Now here's the catch. It only actually does anything, we say it's binding, if it's set below the natural market equilibrium price.
Hmm.
Why do it? Usually to help consumers by keeping prices low on essentials. Think rent control, or maybe price caps on gasoline during a crisis. The goal is affordability.
Okay, below equilibrium makes things cheaper, but what are the results? What does it do to the market?
Well, here's the unintended consequence. By forcing the price down, you get more people wanting to buy, quantity demanded goes up, but fewer people wanting to sell, quantity supplied goes down. So a binding price ceiling inevitably creates a shortage. It also messes with our surplus. Producer surplus definitely shrinks. Consumer surplus. It's complicated. Some win with the low price, others lose because they can't find the good at all. And crucially, it creates deadweight loss. The market is no longer efficient.
Deadweight loss, we'll come back to that. What about the opposite? A price floor, setting a minimum price.
Exactly. A price floor is a legal minimum price. Buyers have to pay at least this much. And again, it's only binding if it's set above the free market equilibrium price. Why? Often to help producers, like ensuring farmers get a certain price for crops, or setting a minimum wage to guarantee workers a certain income level.
And the effects of a binding price floor, above equilibrium this time.
It flips the problem. Now, the higher price makes suppliers want to sell more, quantity supplied up, but buyers want to buy less, quantity demanded down. So a binding price floor creates a surplus. Think unsold grain, or people unable to find jobs at the minimum wage. Consumer surplus usually falls. Producer surplus is mixed, some sellers benefit, others can't sell their stuff, and just like the ceiling, it causes deadweight loss. The market's out of whack, efficiency is lost.
Okay, this deadweight loss, DWL, it sounds pretty negative, but what is it? Like, what actually being lost?
It's like economic potential that just evaporates. DWL is the loss of total surplus, the combined CS and PS that happens when the market isn't at its efficient equilibrium, usually because of some intervention, like a price control or a tax. Think of it this way. Maybe a buyer was willing to pay $10 and a seller willing to accept $8. In a free market, they'd make a deal, creating $2 of surplus. But if a price control prevents that specific transaction, that $2 of potential value is just gone. Nobody gets it. That's deadweight loss. It's missed opportunities.
So it's not just a transfer from one group to another, it's value that disappears entirely. And you mentioned graphs before. Finding this DWL area must be important.
Oh, absolutely crucial. For any kind of market analysis, especially on exams, you must be able to identify the areas representing consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss on a graph after an intervention. Common causes. Price ceilings cause shortages and DWL. Price floors cause surpluses in DWL. Taxes drive a wedge between buyer price and seller price, causing DWL. Even monopolies, by restricting output, create DWL. It's the signature of market inefficiency.
It seems like there's always this trade-off then. Governments try to help someone, maybe consumers with a ceiling or producers with a floor, but this deadweight loss pops up. Is that loss ever, acceptable?
That's the heart of the policy debate, isn't it? Economically speaking, DWL is pure inefficiency, a loss of potential value. But policymakers might decide that the goal, say, making housing more affordable, even with shortages, or ensuring a minimum income, even with some unemployment, is worth that efficiency cost. It's a constant balancing act between, fairness or equity and pure economic efficiency.
Okay, moving on from direct price controls. Governments have other tools, right? Like excise taxes. These are taxes on specific things, gas, cigarettes, alcohol, that kind of stuff. How do they fit into this picture?
Yeah, excise taxes are super common, and they're a great way to see, again, how policy impacts the market, especially when we start asking, who really ends up paying this tax?
Right. So slap an excise tax on something. What happens to our friends CS, PS, and that DWL, and where does the government fit in?
Okay, think graphically again. An excise tax is like adding a cost for the seller. So it effectively shifts the supply curve upwards.
Yeah.
Or you could think of it as shifting left, basically. Less is supplied at any given price. This has a few key effects. One, the overall quantity bought and sold goes down. Two, consumer surplus shrinks because buyers pay a higher price. Three, producer surplus also shrinks because sellers receive a lower net price after paying the tax. Four, deadweight loss appears again because the tax stops some trades that would have happened otherwise. And five, the government gets tax revenue. That's the tax per unit times the number of units sold.
So CS down, PS down, DWL up, government revenue up, a clear picture. But you mentioned who pays. The government might collect it from this seller, but does the seller just eat that cost, or do they pass it on? This is a tax incidence thing, right?
Exactly. Tax incidence. And this is where it gets really interesting and very testable. Who actually bears the economic burden of the tax? It all comes down to elasticity, specifically the price elasticity of demand.
Elasticity,
Mhm.
right. How responsive buyers are to price changes. So what if demand is inelastic? Meaning people will buy it pretty much no matter the price.
Okay, if demand is inelastic, think essential medicines, or maybe gasoline in the short run, consumers aren't very sensitive to price changes. They need it or have few substitutes. In this case, producers find it easier to pass most or even all of the tax costs onto consumers in the form of higher prices. So with inelastic demand, consumers bear more of the tax burden. The demand curve will look pretty steep on a graph.
Makes sense. If we gotta have it, we pay more. What about the flip side? If demand is elastic, lots of substitutes available.
Right. If demand is elastic, consumers are very sensitive to price. If the price goes up even a little, they'll switch to something else. Think maybe a specific brand of soda or a luxury item you can easily live without. Here, producers know they can't just hike the price to cover the tax because they'll lose too many customers. So they end up absorbing more of the tax costs themselves. With elastic demand, producers bear more of the tax burden. The demand curve looks flatter.
Mastering how to see this on a graph steep curve, consumers pay, flat curve, producers pay, that's definitely something you'll want to practice. Super important concept. Pause the screen for a moment and try the practice problems. The answers are at the end of the video. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. We've been talking mostly about domestic markets. What about trade between countries? Why do nations trade? Seems complex.
Well, it connects right back to efficiency, actually. Trade usually creates huge economic gains overall, but you're right, it also brings in another layer of government policy, especially things like tariffs.
So why trade? Our source material boiled it down nicely. Specialization plus comparative advantage equals gains. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, that's foundational economics right there. The basic idea is that countries, like people, are better off doing what they're relatively best at. That's specialization. They figure out what they can produce at a lower opportunity cost than other countries. That's comparative advantage. Then, they trade what they make for the stuff other countries specialize in. The result: more total goods and services for everyone, more variety, often lower prices. It's generally a win-win, boosting global efficiency.
Okay, trade sounds pretty good then. So why would a country put up barriers? Like, what exactly is a tariff?
A tariff is just a tax on goods that are imported into a country. A border tax, essentially. Why impose them? Well, several reasons get cited. One big one is to protect domestic industries from foreign competitors. Maybe it's a new infant industry that needs shielding, or an older one struggling against cheaper imports. Another reason is simply to raise revenue for the government. And sometimes, honestly, it's political, used as leverage against other countries.
Okay, so protecting local jobs, getting government cash, or playing politics. Now let's do that comparison again. A world with free trade versus one with tariffs. How does the market picture change?
Right, this is another classic analysis, often done with graphs.
Ah.
So picture the no-tariff world first. With free trade, the price is often the lower world price. Consumers generally love this big consumer surplus. Domestic producers, maybe not so much. They face more competition.
And then impose a tariff. What shifts?
The tariff acts like a tax on imported goods, so it pushes the price of those imports up within the country, though not usually all the way back to the no-trade domestic price. So what happens? Consumer surplus shrinks because prices are higher. Domestic producer surplus grows because they're shielded a bit and can sell more at a higher price. The government collects tariff revenue on the imports that still come in. And you guessed it, deadweight loss, DWL, appears. This DWL comes from two sources. One part is lost consumer surplus from trades that no longer happen, and the other part represents inefficient domestic production goods now made at home that could have been bought cheaper from abroad. Analyzing all those pieces, CS, PS tariff revenue, DWL, on a graph after a tariff is imposed, that's a comprehensive skill. It pulls everything together. You'll definitely want to be comfortable with that.
Pause the screen for a moment and try the practice problems. The answers are at the end of the video. Wow, okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, from understanding surplus and efficiency
Yep, consumer and producer surplus, leading to allocative efficiency.
to seeing what happens when governments step in with price ceilings and floors.
Creating those shortages, surpluses, and that crucial deadweight loss.
Then digging into excise taxes and who really ends up paying thanks to elasticity.
That tax incidence piece is key.
And finally, looking at the bigger picture with international trade and the effects of tariffs.
It really shows how interconnected these ideas are, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you see them playing out all the time in news reports, policy debates, even just thinking about prices at the store. Understanding this stuff makes you a much savvier observer of the world.
Absolutely. And for anyone studying this, especially for the AP exam, we've hit on some really critical concepts, and those graphical analysis skills, definitely worth going back over these, maybe sketching out the graphs yourself. It really helps it sink in.
So let's leave you with a thought. We've seen that government intervention, even when it's trying to help, often creates this deadweight loss, this inefficiency. Given that, what do you think is the biggest trade-off governments face when they decide to meddle in a market? Is it just about that lost economic pie? Or are there other costs, maybe harder to measure, that they have to weigh up to, something to chew on?
This is the last chapter. Check the answers to the practice problems you solved in the video. Got it, everyone. Hope you followed along with today's lecture. Now, let's break down those quiz answers and make sure everything we covered really sticks. You can grab the complete mind map Musica. It's a killer snapshot of today's lesson, plus a super detailed AP economics textbook at www.aplusmap.ai. Ready? Let's get into those quiz answers. We're confident that AplusMap will help you secure a great score on the AP Economics exam. Looking forward to our next class.